Seems like every time I go somewhere, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. It always is just a closed door.
Honestly, Brian, you're leading at a very high level at a church our size.
Started growing from there, and we just kept launching more and more.
10 locations, more pastors than we can count. I mean, we have
Yeah.
a ton of pastors for our staff. Something incredible has really been birthed out of that.
Yeah, that's one thing the church has done from day one. All the counseling that we need to walk through this, they've been there.
What's the other part of his story? You know, what we're getting there.
Yeah.
Because it's all important to what happened to you after COVID in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
God was using the team around you to be able to sustain you in a way that you had no idea.
I said, I love you. Good night. And leaned down and kissed her, and she kissed me, and she said, I love you too. And I walked upstairs and got in the bed, and that was the last time I saw her alive.
Mr. Brian Owens.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Good morning.
It is very good to have you here on the podcast.
My pleasure.
How would you describe yourself to the world?
Boring. Yeah, I am just your average, normal guy. There's nothing special about me at all. But no, seriously, I'm just a regular guy like everybody else. Get up every morning, put my legs in my pants, and walk around just like everybody else.
You and I have been talking about doing this for a little while. And I want people to hear your story, and I want them to be encouraged about really what is it that the Lord has done through you and through your family, and how you've put him on display. Like that's the real message of what we're trying to do. You know, the podcast is Heart to Mission podcast, and there's this gap, I think, in a lot of people's lives between like their identity, who they are, and what they get to do with their lives. And we're passionate about hearing people closing that gap, hearing the stories of people being able to do what God's called them to do, in spite of some of the things that they face in life. So I'm glad you're here to tell your part of this. You're part of that story. I'm excited for that. So where did you grow up in this world, man? Where'd you get trained up, Brian?
Promised land, man. That's where I grew up, over in Northwest Georgia.
Yep.
So right outside of Atlanta, in Cedartown, Georgia is where I'm from. Polk County, Georgia, which is where my good buddy and teammate Wayne Bray, he was from Rockmart. I was from over in Cedartown. We were separated by about 15 miles.
Yeah.
About a grade apart from each other in high school. But yeah, that's where I was born, in Rome, Georgia, and grew up in Cedartown. My mom was a nurse, worked at the ER nurse and a floor nurse. My dad worked for General Electric. He was a welder. So that was home for most of young life. I think I moved to Chicago when I was 20, I think it was.
Really?
When I went to Moody Bible Institute.
Tell me, what was it, for people that don't know, what's it like growing up in that part of the world? Like, I mean, there are like anywhere else, you know, there's just differences in where you grow up and what it's like. So growing up here in the upstate of South Carolina might be different than there. So what was it like growing up for somebody in that part of the world when you grew up?
Yeah, growing up in the 80s, I was born in the early 70s, but growing up in the 80s there, it was great to me. I didn't realize, you know, just really until you get older and look back, just how blessed you really are at where you grew up and what you had. We had what we needed. We didn't have everything we wanted, but we had everything we needed. I grew up typical, had a younger brother, and Dad took us fishing, hunting, and, you know, things that you would normally do. But we just didn't go on all the big trips or things like that. It was really centered around family. My mom grew up in Oklahoma. My dad was stationed at Fort Seals.
Okay.
And that's where they met. And so when they got married in 1969, he brought her back out from Oklahoma. She was an Okie girl, brought her out from Oklahoma back to Northwest Georgia. And I just kind of set up shop there.
Oh man! So you mentioned earlier, and I want to talk a little bit about this. But you mentioned you and Wayne grew up in neighboring towns, one grade off of it. Were you friends?
Yeah.
Were you connected through those years?
I never knew Wayne personally. I knew his dad, believe it or not, because I started in ministry as one of the preacher boys when I was 14 years old. So I would do the circuit in Cedartown and sometime in Rockmart and Haralson County and Floyd County and sometimes up in Northeast Alabama. But I knew his dad, Phil, real well. He was at Piedmont Avenue Baptist. And so, and then I grew up with Wayne's first cousin, Jason Bray, and he went to Cedartown. And like I said, Wayne went to Rockmart. So that was our interaction. I'm sure I probably interacted with him, and I was either a young punk or he was a young punk. And
weren't we all at some point, right? So you were 14, called into ministry at 14. How did you discern that at 14 years old?
Yeah, I don't really know, other than I have a mom and a dad that love God, and grandparents that love God, and so being exposed to the church all growing up and just sitting under good godly men who may not have been the most educated men by the world's standards, but they loved God and they loved his word and they preached it faithfully. It was something that was real in my soul that I knew that I needed to connect with. And once, as even a 10th, 11th grader, I remember hearing the story from the pulpit of Samuel and hearing the voice and going and talking to Eli. And it was like, I don't know that that's exactly what happens to me, but I feel like there's something going on in here. And so thankfully I had some guys like Neil Brown and Guy Smith and other guys in my life, and talking to my mom and dad about it. They got me a chance to sit down and talk to them. And it was like, God could very well be speaking to your young heart. Just listen. Just keep listening. And so it was very evident in April of 1986 that call became very crystal clear in my life. It was Southern Baptists were running a crusade. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was Here's Hope, Jesus Christ, or something. I can't remember what it was, but
like a tent revival thing.
Well, it was all the churches were running it and trying to do it, and it was a programmed approach. But it was just very obvious that I asked God if he could help me see that that's really what he wanted me to do, because I didn't really want to do it. I mean, I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but going into the ministry really wasn't on my top list of exciting
Not
things
as lucrative as you thought it was going to be.
And so I just told God, I said, look, if you can make it so that my parents aren't there and that my best friend is there and that the preacher talks directly to me, then I'll stop this, whatever it is going on in my heart, and I'll follow you. So the day of, and I thought I was in the clear because, first of all, my mom and dad were always at church. I mean, always at church.
You wanted this situation to go down where they weren't there.
I didn't want anybody there.
You didn't want anybody there.
Yeah, it was going to be my decision. Instead of being influenced. And not that they would, but I was trying to make it as most difficult thing for God as possible. But really what happened is he showed out. So day of, my grandma has some kind of serious illness, and she goes into the hospital. And so she's not at church, and neither are my folks. And I get to church, and I walk in, and my best friend from school was sitting in the pew next to his girlfriend. She had invited him to come to church, and he showed up.
Oh, way.
And then the pastor got up, Dr. Tony Weaver. He was preaching through the book of Revelation, and he said something to the effect of, I don't know who this is for, but you know what God's telling you to do, and you just need to do it. And but that first hymn of that first song of the invitation, right down there, I was scared spitless because I had no idea what I was signing up for.
Yeah.
I thought I did, but I really didn't know what I was signing up for. But I knew at that moment that God was real, and that whatever he wanted to do with my life was worth whatever I could surrender to him at that moment.
Man, that's so cool. It is really, as we talk through your story, I do want to hear some more about these, North Georgia roots, because, obviously now you are one of the executive pastors at Upstate Church here in South Carolina, a church that I am very fortunate and grateful to serve on staff alongside you.
We're glad you and your family are with us.
We love it so much, and honestly, Brian, you're leading at a very high level at a church our size, and how God has used that story. I want to talk more about that, but before we dive into all that, I want to hear more about your family. So you go to Moody, you obviously start doing seminary and all those kinds of things. When did you meet your wife? Tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, Sheri. I met Sheri. Her maiden name was Beardsley.
Beardsley?
Met her on the very first day of the very first class. And so
At seminary? At Moody?
At Moody.
At Moody.
Yeah, Moody is an undergraduate school, so we were going to work on our bachelor's degrees.
Okay.
And so she came into the classroom. I'll never forget the outfit she had on. It was this kind of a brown, blue kind of dress. They were requiring ladies to wear dresses.
Okay.
I'm telling my age now. This is 1991. So they were required to wear dresses
For sure.
to class. And she had on this beautiful hat, a feminine cowboy hat kind of looking outfit. So she had been out serving with youth on a mission out in Kansas City. So she had been exposed to the Western culture. And so she came in dressed like that. And I was like, okay, I can dig this.
All right.
And so she sat down right in front of me. And I can't remember what the class was about. All I can remember is that she was sitting in front of me. And I was like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you immediately talk to her? Did you?
The first interaction I had with her was actually one where I thought I was in trouble because unlike today where they take attendance electronically, back then they'd pass the book around and you'd have to sign in that you were here. And so I got the book. And so I was trying to find a way, well, how can I, at least let her know that I'm in the same room with her.
Yeah.
And so I tapped her on the shoulder and I tried to hand her the book and she turned around and went like, you idiot, don't be giving me the book. The book is going towards the back of the class. I'm like, I just blew my chance.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. But I decided as a freshman, I wanted to run for student government, student council. And so I was running for the president. And of course, you stand in front of the student body and share. And so I got up and all these other folks who were Midwestern or Northern folks spoke. And I stood up with this long, very pronounced Southern drawl.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all it took for her.
Oh.
Because she came running out after the chapel service and said, hey, I don't know if you know me, but I'm Sheri. And if you win the presidency, I want to serve on student council with you. And so I campaigned like nobody's business.
You were a man on a mission. I can just imagine you sitting there, seeing this lady come in, this young girl come in with the hat and the whole thing, and you just being smitten. I can just imagine this moment. How great is that? So now you are definitely raising money for your presidential campaign.
Oh, you know it. Oh yeah, it's fierce battle, mudslinging all over the place. I'm just kidding.
Oh man, that's really good.
Yeah, so I did win, and so we served together in that capacity and just kind of started going from there. Then we just started connecting. I worked at the desk at night to help pay some of my books and tuition and stuff like that was paid for, but I worked the desk, she worked in AV, and so we saw each other in the evenings and on weekends in our regular duties on campus and just struck it up.
Man, so you obviously won that seat in more than one way. You won her heart and also the presidency. When did you guys get married? At what point did that happen?
Yeah, so we both graduated at Moody in 1995. She graduated. She was a semester earlier than me because she had gone to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. So she had some transfer credits in. She graduated in December of 94, technically, and I graduated in May of 95. But she had gone to live with her sister over in Fort Wayne, and then when we both graduated in May, she came back for the graduation, and then we both decided that we were going to go to seminary to the same school area, although she was she was a very strong and independent young lady. So she was not somebody to trifle with. And so right before we were getting ready to make the decision about where we were going to go to seminary, which we eventually settled in Louisville to go down to Southern Seminary, she was definitely the smarter one of the two of us because she got a full ride scholarship there. So I did not. So
you're still working the desk.
Still working the desk. And so we decided to go down there, and I was talking to her one day over dinner. I was like, we should just go to the same school, we should, and she's like, well, why should we do that? And I was like,
she was no dummy, right?
Yeah. I was like, well, it's because, we're compatible, we can do things together, you love God, I love God. We can make this work. Well, yeah, we could, but what does that do with me? You could go do that with anybody. And so in other words, what she was doing was get your rear end in gear and let's do something about what's going on. And so I pitched a fit actually and said, so you're telling me that if I don't put a ring on your finger and be willing to go, because she wanted to go be a missionary.
Oh.
And I wasn't necessarily opposed to be a missionary, but, she just wanted to know if I was at least open to it.
Yeah.
And so I said, if I don't give you a ring on the finger, and if I don't say I'm going to go live in a dirt hut on the other side of the world and eat rice and sleep on the floor, you're not going to even consider our relationship. And she said, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, unless you're open to what God wants you to do, and you would say yes to what he says, and I happen to be involved in that process, that's what I'm talking about.
Huh.
So I ate crow for about a week or so, got over myself, over my hurt feelings. And so we both decided that we were going to take the relationship a little seriously, and went on down to Louisville. Got robbed when we got down there.
No way.
Yeah, I put all my stuff into storage and went back with my mom and dad to Georgia to pick up some stuff because school didn't start until August. And so Sheri was already on campus because she had a job on campus. She already had a full ride. And so I left my stuff there and was coming back to do interviews in a storage place, one of those store-all things on the side of the interstate. Well, somebody broke into 10 or 12 of them, stole everything I got. I mean, they took everything, my underwear, my T-shirts, my socks. They took everything out of that thing.
No way, Brian.
So I took all of the insurance money for the replacement stuff and said, you know what? We said we were going to wait until we got done with seminary.
Who needs underwear?
Who needs that? Let's just get married. And so she was completely blown away because that happened at the end of June. I got the engagement ring at the 1st of July. We got married. We got engaged at the end of July, and 5 months later we were married.
No way. In the first year.
First year.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah.
And you guys started building a family immediately, or was that after seminary? What was that?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that was when everything was going on at Southern Seminary. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, there was a lot of changes that were going on. And so I was going there to work because at Moody I'd taken Greek and Hebrew and all those other things. And so I was going to go and work on their advanced MDiv. Well, all the professors in the seminary theology department lost their job or resigned. And so I went in to interview with them, and the guy said, it's great. I think you do wonderful here, but I'm the last guy standing in the theology department, and this is my last week. And after this week, we don't have anybody else to take in new students. So they weren't accepting new advanced MDiv students at that time. Thankfully, Sheri was still able to get in there. And long story short, after all that happened and we got married, I decided to start working part-time, 2 different jobs. Worked at UPS, unloaded planes, had to memorize all the zip codes in America because I had to sort all those packages when they
that's automatic now, but back then it was all forearm strength.
You know it. And then I was working on the phones and customer service at night as well. And so I was just doing that temporarily while we got married. Sheri worked in a children's home, so after we got married, the Kentucky Baptist Children's Home was right down the road. And so that's where we stayed 3 or 4 nights a week or at our apartment, one of the two places like that. And so she never finished her degree because they transferred her school down to Baylor. I never got in there because they weren't accepting new students. But long story short, I got into the business world. I got tapped on the shoulder to go and start working in Sears Card to begin with, and then Citibank. And I was miserable because that's not what I wanted to do. I
Yeah.
thought God had called me to ministry, but the guys at the office were like, I said, I don't know spreadsheets. I don't know T-cells. I don't know, pivot tables. These things, they said, you don't have to understand that stuff. We can teach you that.
Yeah.
We just need somebody who's got people skills that can lead. And so every time I would apply for a church or try to go back to school to work on my degree, it just never worked. But anytime something opened up in the business world, that promotion, that next step, it was like, go, go, go. Everything lined up perfectly. So for 14 years, after we moved there in 1995 till 2009, I just kept advancing in the business world and could never find a ministry job. And I was just like so confused because it was like, God, I thought at 14, this is what you said you wanted me to do.
Sure.
And here I am, making a good living, working in the business world, but I am so miserable because this is not what I figured you were calling me to do. But when I came to Simpsonville, I had been this bi-vocational pastor in a little town called Shelbyville, Kentucky, which is about 40 miles away from Louisville, and had done that for about 4 years, driving back and forth on Sundays and Wednesdays. And buddy who we work with, Ashley Moore, he was my pastor actually when we were in Louisville for a few years. And so he came to Simpsonville, and the guy who was my predecessor had retired and sent me a note saying, hey, there's an opening happening. I think you'd be good. It's finances, it's operations, it's all the facilities and, just the back end part of business.
What was those 14 years? What was your primarily in the business world? What were you really focused on doing the role that you were doing there?
Yeah, leadership development, team development, and primarily just really more centric around the teams that took care of customers. I primarily stayed on the customer service side of thing, and then got slowly involved into audit control, training, just all kinds of things that I never would have been exposed to. But most of my time was team development and customer facing stuff. And then about 1999 to 2001, I started looking more towards just the back end, how systems work, how the bank works, regulations, OCC, those kind of things.
So you're building all these skills all the while you're feeling like I'm assuming like you're on the backside of a desert.
I
like
did.
What is going on with the Lord's like this calling? You have very specific calling at 14. I'm sure that had to be stressful and confusing. And what was that like to be walking through that for all that time?
It was the most difficult thing because I'd quit every Monday afternoon. I'd come home in my mind, I was done. And Sheri's like, can't do it. So when Sheri and I started, when we got married in 95, we started trying to have a family about a year later. And then we were having trouble conceiving. And so we started putting a pattern together. All the females on her side of her mom's family, none of the girls were able to have children. And so, we had just kind of chalked it up that, there's a chance that we're not going to be able to have a child. But then in 1999, in February of 1999, we both discovered that we were expecting, and so it took us about 4 years to get there. But we had the first of our 4 kids came along, so it was great working and enjoying that time, being able to be a dad, but at the same time I was traveling a lot too. So 2 weeks out of every month, roughly, I was gone. But I was also working on my degree at Campbellsville University, working on my theology degree. So I was able to do that during the night times when I was on the road, and when I'd come home, I could be home. So it worked out great.
Well, during those years, I mean, I was also doing some, we called it extended learning at that VHS tapes, man.
Yep.
We would, and then we had we would test by proxy back in those days. We'd have to go to just take a test. I had to go to the church, and then somebody would watch you to do an exam. And man, those were some days. I found not long ago a whole set of I think it was an evangelism class by Elmer Towns, the whole thing when I was doing that at Liberty. So I can feel that. So you were doing that. You were doing you're working in the business world all the while waiting for an opportunity. At some point in time, you got into ministry doing a bi-vocational.
Yeah,
how did that
one
work?
of my professors, preaching professor at the universities. Of course, you have to give your sermon, and he's like, I think I got a spot for you. He had started a church plant over in Shelbyville.
Okay.
They were meeting in a bank that had gone out of business. And so then we transitioned from there to a movie theater. So we were working out of a movie theater as a church plant for a year. And so he left the church. I stayed on as the intentional interim pastor. The bank wouldn't let me, as an officer of the bank, I couldn't have a full-time bank job and be bivocational as a pastor. So as long as I stayed the interim pastor, they allowed me to do it. So I did that for 4 years there.
You were the long-term interim.
Yeah, and I was so wanting to get in ministry so bad. And I had the outlet.
Yeah.
But about 2 or 3 years into it, I mean, I'm making really good money at the bank.
Sure.
And, the church is taking good care. I mean, we're not, it's not a large church. We're growing, but it's still basically a church plant. And so one of my managers at the bank, his mom died, so I went to the funeral. And so we're sitting in the funeral there in Louisville, and I had gone by myself because Sheri was, I can't remember where she was at, but I had just gone. She had the kids, I'm sure. And so we're singing the song, and I can't remember the name of the song, but it's basically, Here I am, Lord, it is I, Lord. Mm-hmm. Are you calling in the night? If you go, I will follow, basically. I can't remember what it was.
That's repercussions from Samuel when you were 14.
Exactly. So that kind of hit me between the eyes like a 2x4. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, I'm singing this. And I'm very clear. God said, will you do what you're singing? I'm like, well, yeah, I will. Of course I will. You know me, God. I'll be happy to. It's like, no, really. Would you be willing to do what you're singing about?
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, God, I will. And so he said, okay. And I remember just standing there, just started squalling like a baby, which is a good thing at a funeral, because if you're going to cry, it's a great place to cry, right? But God had totally wrecked my world. And so I was like, okay, I don't really have these experiences a lot, but when they do, it seems to be pretty life-altering. Uh-huh. And so I went home, and I had applied and gone to 2 or 3 job positions up in the Cincinnati area for churches. I thought, I was a shoo-in. They actually recruited me to come to them. Like, we want you to come work here. And they all fell through. And so I was just like, God, you're teasing me. You're teasing me. You're telling me all these things, what you're asking me to do. And it seems like every time I go somewhere, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. It always is just a closed door. Then the phone call came. I remember I was sitting in my office at work, and my phone rings, and it's Ashley Moore. He says, hey, bud. I said, hey, what's going on? And so he tells me about my predecessor here at the church who had just retired. And he's like, I don't know. You might not be willing to do this, but if you're willing, I'll slide your name across the table. If you just send me your resume, and we'll see if this might be a good fit. It's a great place. Love to have you come be here. And so as soon as I hung up that phone, I got up, walked around the side of the desk, and closed the door and started crying again, because I knew I had never been to South Carolina in my life, never once in my life. But I knew at that moment, we're coming to South Carolina. That was it.
By that time, you had how many kids?
We had 3.
You had 3 by that time.
Yeah, so I started seminary degree when my second son, Titus, was born in 2002. So I was having to do it at night. And I graduated the month before Lydia was born in 2005.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, that is, and just a side note, your daughter Lydia just got married recently.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, she sure
And
did.
my oldest son and your now son-in-law were friends when they were very, very small children. It's a small world. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
very, very
precious.
cool. Just a kind of a wild thing that we had just come up out of nowhere. I remember about a year ago asking you
Yeah.
about your family, and you were like, yeah, my daughter's dating this young man from this church across town. I was like, what's his name? And you say his name, and then I pull this picture out, and you were like, "No way,
Yeah.
this is crazy." So that's kind of a cool,
Small world.
cool story. So tell me, about the kids. I want to know a little bit about who they are and where they are at this point in life now, as we kind of talk about them. But tell me a little bit about your 4 kids, Brian.
Yeah. So when we made the transition to Simpsonville in 2009, Gideon was in 4th grade, Titus was in kindergarten, and Lydia was just 3. So that tells you how long ago that's been. It's been 17 years. And so we moved. We got rid of everything baby related.
Okay.
And I put my house on the market to sell in December of 2008. I don't know if anybody remembers what was going on.
A lot was happening.
The market fell out.
Yeah.
And so I had to basically move, and I stayed in a spare bedroom at the Moore's house for 3 months.
Did you really?
I did. And Sheri and the kids stayed back in Louisville because we couldn't get the house to sell.
Yeah.
And so we would meet up in between here and Louisville a few times a month. And so somewhere along those ways, the Lord decided he was going to add us an additional little blessing, an unexpected blessing. So little Levi came along in November of 2009. So once we got here, Levi was a newborn. So I was old enough to be his granddad at that time, but that's how it works. So I got 4 kids. Gideon is 27 now, and he and his wife, Emma, live up right outside of Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to seminary there, felt called to go to Southeastern. So he got bit by the bug early on, and as always, that's just what his focus on. Our second son, Titus, he went to North Greenville University and then bridge transferred over to Clemson to do mechanical engineering. And so he dropped out of school about a year and a half ago because he taught himself how to code and do stuff on the computer that is like way above my pay grade. I don't understand any of it, but he's figured out how to make that work and has done a couple of business ventures and is doing well for himself right now. So he is the one that got all of Sheri's brains because he is by far the smartest, naturally gifted.
Yeah.
All of them are smart kids, but they have to work at it. The others do. He gets it. It just comes to him.
Come free.
Yeah. Lydia, she's the one girl among the 3 boys. We call her the rose amongst the thorns. She just graduated from Anderson University. And Tyler got married in May, and they live up in Rock Hill now.
Yeah.
And she's going to be teaching 6th grade math in Chester Middle School starting this fall. And he's working at PE. He's a PE teacher at a private Christian school up in Rock Hill. So that's where they're at. And then that leaves me with Levi, and he's a rising junior at Woodmont High School. So he's got 2 more years, and then he wants to do what every 17-year-old who loves classic rock, he wants to start a rock band. So we'll see how that
let
works.
us know how we can support that mission. That's incredible. So you guys were here 2009 and went on staff with Upstate Church. Now that was before Pastor Wayne ever came here.
That was when Randy Harlan was
here. Tell me about those. Tell me about those early years here at Upstate Church. Like, what was it like? What was it like doing your job? How was that for you, as far as like living out this hope for ministry that you had been working towards?
Well, I have to say that God's always right, and me of little faith, right? So those 14 years of wandering that I was describing earlier, it all made perfect sense when I sat in the seat. Because growing up, the pastor preached the sermons, went to the hospitals, and did the other things. And, in a small typical church, that's, you have somebody that runs the office. But in First Baptist Simpsonville, we were a mega church by definition at that time, even a small mega church, I guess. We were running 1,500, 1,700. And so, it was about a $2.8 million budget when I got there. So we had, 15, 16 minister staff plus other folks. And so all the business things that I had learned at the bank all of a sudden made perfect sense sitting in the second seat that I was in there, supporting Randy and the church. So all the business related committees, all of the facilities, the finances, all those things that I had reluctantly learned from the business world, grumbling and complaining, made perfect sense once I started what I was doing there. I still got the chance to preach. I enjoy doing that from time to time. But it was like, God was just like, look, I got this. I got this.
And at that time, I mean, those were in the days where what we refer to now as mega churches, there weren't a lot of those before. Even having a guy on the team in that kind of role, there really weren't a lot of like seminaries you could have gone and studied for that. Like now there's all kinds of support and resources and education. But in those days, that really wasn't the case. So the fact that the Lord's out here carving you out of stone in the business world, like is just amazing to me, because it was going to be necessary for what your calling was.
Right. That's right. 100% correct on that. God is always faithful. And just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not going to make sense at some part.
All right. So Pastor Wayne came here to First Simpsonville.
Upstate Church in 2015.
2015. So that basically put you here, boots on the ground, for 6 years.
Before he showed up.
Yeah. Right. And until that time, what was it like to work and worship at Upstate Church? Well, what would back then would have been First Baptist Church Simpsonville?
Yeah, so it was from my background, it was an unreal experience to be able to be a part of that. It was the first time I was a part of a larger church at any point. But Randy is the kind of leader that he leads humbly, and just like Wayne in that regard. It's not about him; it's not about what he can do, and so. Randy really followed the philosophy of the Blackaby's approach to, experiencing God. If God's moving, that's where we join him.
Yeah.
And so we did have other satellites, is what we used to call them, little campuses, but we just made them their unique feel. So we had a cowboy campus, which was over in Pelzer. We had a campus down in Lawrence. We had a campus in Harrison Bridge, which we called the West Campus, and we started one in Greenville that we called the Delta, which was aimed towards the young pros, 20-something in downtown Greenville. So we were doing what would later become our model of multi-site, but it was just it was more of a mission than it was a strategic plan of sustainability and return on investment and those kind of things. So it was great. God was using it. People were getting saved. People were being baptized. We were baptizing 100 people every year across all those locations. And so it was great to see all that happen. And so when he left and transitioned out, when Randy left and Wayne came on, it was like I went and met with him at the convention office over in Georgia, because he was in West Georgia at Douglasville. And so obviously I went and met with him after the search committee had kind of identified him as our next guy. And I came back, did my recon, came back, and the team were like, well, tell us a little bit about him. Who is he? What are we getting here? I said, well, there's a lot I don't know, but he's a Polk County boy, so that means he's good stock. That's definitely got to be a good thing. He's a good guy. I said, and the only other thing I can tell you is buckle up and hang on. That's all I'm going to say is buckle up and hang on.
That's the most accurate Pastor Wayne statement I've ever heard in my life. That is amazing. So were you the guy that kind of brought the resume to the table for him? Was that somebody else? I mean, those connections had to be somehow in play there, right?
Yeah, they had a search committee that they were working with at that time. Frank Page was our interim pastor.
Yeah, that's right.
They had some connections of other folks, and I wasn't the guy that intentionally slid his name across the table, because I knew of him, but I didn't know him. I knew his dad a lot better than I knew him. So, but when he came on board, he and Amy and the family, it was like he came to the church to clandestine to kind of check it out before he agreed to come.
Yeah.
And so the committee had asked if I would meet with him. And so he and Amy walk in with the boys and the girls at that time. And we're walking around, and he's just walking down the hall, and he said, this is the first time I've ever been to Simpsonville, but it reminds me of a town close to where I grew up, Cedartown, Georgia. I was like, really? Cedartown, Georgia? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, I am from Cedartown, Georgia. He's like, no, you're not. And I was like, yeah, I am.
Come
So,
on.
yeah, it was just like, of course, I had already known that he was from Rockmart, and I had known his dad. And so I said, I know your dad really well. So it was an instant connection right out of the gate. And so it was more like working with a brother from another mother to begin with.
Yeah.
And so even though he and I are completely different, it was a great compatibility.
It's almost like the Lord knows what he's doing, Brian.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know.
All right. He comes on, buckle up and hang on is accurate. Now we're 2015. How does the church begin to change, and how does your role begin to change at that time?
Yeah. So I think if I could summarize it, the best way is saying the previous 6 years before Wayne had come is we were building infrastructure. We were putting things together, systems in place that made sense for us to go to the next level. That's what we kept talking about then. If there's another 1,000 people walking around here, are we ready for that? And we had kind of tapped out with the current system that we were at and how we were set up, which was great. It was nothing wrong with it, but it was just under that model, we were running at full capacity, full tilt. When Wayne came in, we partnered with the Unstuck group out of Atlanta, Tony Morgan. He came in about a year and a half after Wayne had gotten there and helped us revision what we potentially could be. And so we weren't necessarily stuck as a church because God was still moving. People were getting saved.
Yeah.
We were still having hundreds of people being baptized. But just from a growth perspective, what we had been doing just needed to be evaluated. And so going through that process with the Unstuck group and Tony Morgan and Amy and the rest of those guys on the team helped us see what were some of the things that we could re-envision and become a little more focused on. And so that meant that some of the previous campuses that we had that were more of a mission than they were like a long-term sustainability issue, we had to shut those down and collapse them back in. And so that was right out of the gate. We basically went from 5 different locations down to just 2 to begin with. And so we shut down what used to be known as Harrison Bridge. They came back on campus for about 8-9 weeks, and we just retooled, revisioned, reestablished, kind of where we're going as one church, one mission, one purpose. And we launched in 2017, 2018, right around there with both what used to be Harrison Bridge, what used to be West Campus, which is now Harrison Bridge. And so we brought Dallas and Dustin on, 2 young guys. And Dustin and Sloan came in, and they were coming from Taylor's is where they were at that time, but they were coming to a church that didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we were actually going to launch a campus in Five Forks and didn't have a footprint yet. And so they came by faith, and long story short, we started out as 3 sites in 2018. One at what is Harrison Bridge with Dallas and Sloan, and Dustin and their boys were at Five Forks, and just started growing from there, and we just kept launching more and more.
And now 10 campuses.
Gatherings as well, locations, yeah.
10 locations, more pastors than we can count. I mean, we have a ton of pastors for our staff, then also just a lot of preachers, a lot of young guys around our team. I mean, really, something incredible has really been birthed out of that. Birthed out of that whole thing. What God's doing at Upstate, Brian. And I want to ask you this, but how has your role had to change over the past? What is now? Gosh, how many years have you been on the team here? So since 2009, so 17 years.
Yeah.
How's your role changed from that beginning until where you are right now?
I can summarize it most simply by I have had to give up a lot of things that I enjoy doing, but it was not what the church needed at the moment. And so because I had so much experience and was probably, there were some other guys and gals on the team at the time. Like I think about Kathy Robinson, she's got her MBA from Columbia. So she's a very smart lady on the team. But there were a few of us that kind of had some basic business principle ideas, but there weren't many of us there to begin with. So setting all of that up over the 6 or 7 years before Wayne came, and then slowly as he came, we just started restructuring things. And at that time, I was the one single executive pastor that we had, and so Wayne knew a guy over in West Marietta, West Cobb. He's like, it'd be great if we get him on the team. And I was like, well, I've been studying and following, some larger churches have moved to multiple executive pastors. Why don't I give up some of the stuff I got and let's make a spot for Wes and his family to come on. And so they did. And so that's how we were able to get Wes on the team as the second executive pastor at that time. And so that let me focus more on building and finances. He came in and took care of worship, because up to that point I had been, worship as well. And I didn't know anything about worship other than when it sounded great. I enjoyed it, but, I didn't know anything about that.
One of the things that really, when I started looking at our team, and we've been a part of First Baptist for our Upstate Church since 2019, our family, long before I ever came on the team there. But one of the things that was always been really like beautiful, inspiring, wonderful to see is the team of men that just sit around the room, like. And because of my spot on the bus, I always had access to that, like just to see it from knowing all of you guys, being friends with, growing in friendships with a lot of people around the table. Dallas was our first pastor when we came here, and then just getting to meet all these different people and then seeing how they interact with one another. And our model and our pastor, Pastor Wayne, leads with a certain level of like drive, partnered with humility, that I can't spot another leader in my knowledge that I know about that has that combination. Usually, one's tainted by the other, right? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna take the guy that's gonna take the wall down, but I got to carry all the baggage that comes with that, right? Mm-hmm. So far I just hadn't seen all that, baggage with that. Just he's always promoting other people. He's really interested in like the personal development of our team. And if you wonder like who's he putting on the stage, you just never see him driving himself to a stage. He's not on all the screens at our campuses. Not that it wouldn't be great to have him there. It's just he's not a self-promoter. Mm-hmm. And that in turn has resulted in quite an extensive community of pastors and leaders to lead Upstate Church at this point. And Brian, I think people are watching the episode now and they're kind of listening to this story. They're like, man, we know all about this guy. We know about how we built this church and his family. Like, man, what's the other part of his story? What we're getting there. Yeah. Because it's all important to what happened to you after COVID in 2020 and 2021. Yeah. What was coming your way, God was using the team around you to be able to sustain you in a way that you had no idea. Yeah. No, there's a couple of things on a private level, personal at home, and then professionally at work. God was doing incredible things, knitting things together for what would eventually become the worst day of my life on August the 16th in 2021. Pastors and leaders, if you're enjoying this conversation and you want to see where you maybe could take a next step in your leadership, go to hearttomission.com and fill out the Heart Check Assessment. It's 30 questions, takes just a few minutes to fill out, and you'll get right in your inbox for free some next steps for you to take towards closing the gap between your heart and your mission. Sheri and I, when we had moved from Louisville, Kentucky to here, about 2011 or so, right around in there, she got bit by a tick, and we didn't realize that it was that until after it was gotten pretty dangerous. And so she developed a very bad case of Lyme's disease and suffered tremendously. She had Bell's palsy for a while. Left side of her face would always droop whenever she'd get tired, and her joints always hurt. She just had long-term negative impacts from Bell's palsy. And so
from Lyme's disease. Lyme's disease is one of the diseases that can pass the blood-brain barrier. And so,
Yeah.
it affects everything in the whole body. And so she was the same, but she was a little different after that.
Mm.
Like, I remember at that time when we were living at our old house that, there's sometimes she couldn't go down the stairs. She'd have to slide down the stairs on her bottom because her joints were just so inflamed and hurting. And so we wound up in an emergency room. Actually, we were in 3 emergency rooms in 2 different days, never slept for 2 straight days because we could not figure out what was going on with her. And so we got to Memorial Hospital in Greenville, and her internal organs were basically shutting down from this Lyme's disease and how it was just ravishing her body, and we couldn't figure it out. And they finally did the test and determined that was what it was, gave her the antibiotics that she needed at that moment, and she slowly recovered over time. But she came back. You don't go through those kind of illnesses and not come out unchanged. She was still the same Sheri, but you could tell that she had battled something that was pretty strong, but there was a joy there. There was a growth there in her own life. She knew God was using that. And so simultaneously to these things happening privately at our home with her health, the church shortly thereafter started growing like incredible, and we started launching new campuses, the Harrison Bridge and the Five Forks and all those things. So all of a sudden ministry is kicking up to 5th gear, and then privately at home, teenagers become teenagers, and they all lose their mind when they turn 12, and they think they know everything, and you don't know anything. I'm dumber than a box of rocks.
I'm living it.
Yeah. So you deal with the navigating those things as being a parent of 4, and she decided to go back and work on her degree as well. So she was working on her doctorate in counseling. She was a biblical counselor. So there was never a dull moment, either at work or at home. God was just growing in an incredible way. I started building great friendships at church. Wayne and I got closer through that process because it was he and I who were trying to help lead the church. Then when Wes came on to kind of go in that next direction of where we needed to do. And looking back now, it makes all perfect sense. But at that time, it felt like we didn't know what we were doing. We were just hanging on for dear life and just going forward. And then our oldest went to college at North Greenville in 2018. And then in 2020, March of 2020, I'd just come back from a mission trip over in Thailand in October of 2019. And so COVID hit in March of 2020. That's when everything started going crazy with the world. You remember 2 weeks to shut down and all of those things. And so none of our family, Gideon, Titus, Lydia, Levi, Sheri, none of us got COVID. And I mean, I'm a pastor, at that time, going to hospitals, shaking hands with thousands of people every weekend. I'm thinking if somebody's going to get this, it's going to be me. So from March up until July of 2021, we had been avoided the COVID bug. Plenty of people that we went to church with got really sick with it, would go in the hospital, lost one of them, that I knew of. Had been at my getting to know you table. So you'd see this stuff happen, and I'm just like, Lord, why, what's going on? I went to a mission trip with the seniors. Titus graduated from high school in 2021. And so we went down to St. Thomas, and we came back with COVID. Some of us had gotten exposed to it. And so when I got COVID, I really got COVID.
Oh,
so
goodness.
I went out. I was out of commission for a good 2 weeks. So basically the 1st of August. And I went back to work at church on Sunday, April the 15th at Harrison Bridge. I went and did the host over there, even though I wasn't 100%. I got it first, and then about 6 days later, Sheri got it. And so neither one of us were at a good spot. I actually had to go to the emergency rooms. I was in the emergency room getting the experimental treatment stuff and all this kind of stuff. So if I wasn't in the bed, I was in a recliner or on the couch. And the same thing for Sheri. After she got it, she started just feeling awful. And so she was either in the bed, on the couch, or in the recliner. And so, those 2 weeks before she died is kind of a blur because, none of us were at our very, very best, and especially being sick. But I could tell, about day 5 or day 6 in the 25 years that we were married, I can count on one hand the number of times that Sheri took a prescription medicine consistently,
Mhm.
because anytime she took prescription medicine, she would always have that laundry list of
Yeah.
side effects.
Yeah.
She'd have them all. And so she'd have to come off of them
Yeah.
because her body tissue just could not handle that medicine. And so
And that was really the effect of the Lyme's disease that she had been battling since 2011. Like now, there's a whole list of things she's got to worry about that she didn't before.
Yeah, exactly. And so when she got it, she knew she had to take this specific medicine. I can't remember now what it was, but she didn't like how it was making her feel because it just made her feel anxious and jittery. And, she, middle-aged woman, like I'm a middle-aged guy, she's going through things hormonally and physiologically. And so she knew that, things were changing in her body, and she just didn't like how the medicine was making her feel. She was already stressed and anxious to begin with. She was struggling with that, but this just amped it up really heavily. And so our second son, Titus, is now going to North Greenville University. And so it's the couple of days into August, and we've got about a week before he moves in. She's sick. And so between the two of us, we're trying to get him ready, last minute stuff. Let's get him to college.
Yeah.
So I'm taking nebulizer treatments because I can't breathe. I got bad asthma, on all this kind of different medicine. And that's how it kind of took me out. We moved Titus in to North Greenville on that Saturday morning before Sheri passed on that Monday. And I had gotten him. When I say moved in, I mean, it was like I was there, I wasn't hauling boxes and running things,
Trash can and bed sheets.
Yeah.
He's taking care of.
I'm there for the moral support. You go get them, guys. But I knew I couldn't stay there a whole day because I had to go back and do a breathing treatment. I couldn't breathe. I was just having a hard time with catching my breath. So Lydia and I left and came back. Sheri decided to stay. Again, she has been exposed to COVID. She's 7 days out, so she's not contagious. But the day before we moved Titus in, something started to change that, in hindsight, makes sense. But back then, it was just like everything's crazy in the Owens household. And so it seemed like it was just another crazy moment. You got a house full of kids and kids moving to college and those kind of things. Well, I remember on that Thursday before we moved Titus in to North Greenville, she was just convinced. I remember she just looked at me in the eye. She said, Titus is going to die on the road. He is absolutely going to get killed. Gideon's not going to get killed. Lydia's not going to get killed. We're not going to get killed. Levi's not, but Titus is going to die on the road. And there was nothing I could say. I was like, well, tell me about that,
Yeah, she's convinced.
She is 100% convinced. I can't stop the feeling. I just know it's going to happen.
Now, to understand, Brian, it seems like this was very much out of character
100%.
For her because, she was a biblical counselor. She obviously knew how to communicate her own feelings. She obviously was working to help other people do that, so that she would come along and begin to say things like this. That was incredibly out of character.
Oh, completely. And the thing was, she knew that what she was saying didn't make sense. And she would tell me, she's like, I know what I'm thinking is not making sense, but I can't get rid of it. I can't stop. She was blaming it on the medicine. This medicine that I'm taking for COVID is what's making me feel this way. And then on Saturday, we moved Titus in. And if you've got folks that are listening that take their kid to college, the first kid to college, you're always going to forget something. So be gracious with yourself. But we, typical mom, dad, we pulled a parental thing. We forgot to get him a printer. And so he realizes that after I am back home, done my breathing treatment, Sheri calls and she says, we forgot to get Titus a printer and we're going to lose the house. And I thought she was joking. And I was like, what? And she's like, we can't afford to buy him a printer. And I was like, Sheri, we're not rolling in money, but we can buy.
We can afford a printer.
We can afford a printer, She's like, well, he's doomed now. He's going to fail and flunk out of North Greenville, and he's not even started a class yet. He's not going to make it. I'm like, Sheri, it's just a printer. Let's get him a printer and, he'll be all right. So I said, just have him go on to Amazon and find one and buy it. And we'll take it up to him. It's not a big deal.
2 days, it'll be there. Right.
And she just told me, she said, I promise you, Brian, if you do this, we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to lose the house. We're going to lose everything. Now, we've got bills like everybody else, but we've never been late. There was nothing wrong, with our finances, but she was utterly convinced that we were going to lose it, everything that we had, because we had forgotten to get him a printer. And she would have these moments where she's like, I know what I'm thinking is wrong, but I can't stop it. I can't stop it. So she gets the printer online and she calls me back and she is just sobbing, absolutely uncontrollably sobbing at North Greenville in his room and says, he's picked out a printer. I said, well, good. Go ahead and just buy it for him. And she said, no, I can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? She said, if I buy this printer, we're going to lose everything. I was like, Sheri, it's just a printer. And so I would like to say that I was walking in the Spirit and I did everything right at that moment, but it was completely absurd to me that she would not just buy him a printer because she felt like it was going to be her responsibility if she bought it, that
everything's going to crash.
And now, listen, this is a woman who bought everything at Walmart.com and Amazon.com. Everything that we had in our house.
Everything.
Came off of a phone that she would do, but she could not touch the button. She's like, I'm scared of the button. I can't touch the button. If you want this, you're going to have to sign in to the cart and approve it. I'm afraid of the button. And I lost everything at that moment. I was like, Sheri, this is the most ludicrous, absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. It's just a stupid button. Have Titus punch it or you punch it. Somebody punches it. And then she just breaks down uncontrollably even more. And she's like, I'm losing my mind. I can't do this, Brian. I cannot do this.
Brian.
And so I just say, okay, I do it. I said, when you get home, we're going to talk. We're going to talk.
Okay. So you're telling me this story right now from years later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want you for a second to help us like transport your mind back into those moments. What kinds of things were you had to be just completely confused, frustrated, probably angry as you alluded to. Mm-hmm. How are you making sense of what was happening? How were you putting that together? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, like I said a little earlier, I think a lot of it, she and I were just hanging the hook of it's the medicine. It's making her feel this way.
Yeah.
She does not respond well to prescription medicines. And so it's that. But at the same time, while I'm trying to be gracious and thoughtful of it, I am also just like, she's not at her best. I know 100% I'm not at my best. I just had been in the emergency room a few days before. So I'm still 50% of capacity. She's 50% of her capacity. So it kind of sort of made sense, but it didn't. And so when she came home, that was when we basically had a nice spirited discussion, I guess is the way we can say it. It wasn't ugly or nasty, but it was like, come on, this is not you. What is going on here? She's like, I just can't control these thoughts. I can't control what's going in my head. I know what I'm thinking is not true, but it's there. I just can't turn it off. I cannot turn it off. And so that was on Saturday. And Sunday, I got up and went to Harrison Bridge that morning. And she was going to try to go, but she sent me a text. And I still got the text. And she said, I can't go this morning because I just can't have people put their eyeballs on me. And at the time, I thought, well, that was kind of a weird way of saying it. I thought, she's saying that she didn't want people to see her in her condition and how she was feeling. And she just didn't feel nervous. She felt nervous and all those kind of things. And so I said, okay, that's no problem. When I get home, we'll talk. And so I got back after church, and I remember sitting in the recliner. She was sitting right next to me there on the couch, and she's rocking back and forth, kind of like this. And she's like, I just don't like how this medicine is making me feel. I don't like how it is affecting me like this. I just know that something's just not right. I can't control what I'm thinking. I can't control what I'm worried about. I can't control what I'm stressed about. I just can't stop it. And so I said, it's okay, sweetie. It's going to be all right. You only got a couple more days of the medicine to take. Do you want to go ahead and go off of it? She's like, no, I can't go off of it because if I go off of it and I get sick again, we're going to be right back to where we started again. Yeah. And so we both agreed, she's going to keep trudging on, soldiering through. Well, sometime after, I went back to a finance committee meeting that afternoon, and sometime that afternoon, until the next morning, she just kind of went inward. She went inward. And looking back on it, it kind of makes sense. But at the time, I'm laying on the recliner, she's laying on the couch, and we're just existing because we're both getting on the other side of COVID. She did a counseling session on that Saturday.
As the counselor, not counseling for
Somebody
her.
called her and said that that he wanted to kill himself. And so she talked him through, this is not what God wants you to do. This is not how you need to do this, and used all of her skills as a biblical counselor to kind of help this guy through his traumatic experience. And so sometime Sunday afternoon until 6:30, 7 o'clock on that Sunday morning, she went to a place inside her head that none of us could follow her to, and started a decision process that changed all of our lives forever.
Brian, how were you specifically aware of that shift? Like, I mean, because it seems like on Saturday you had some level of communication with her, even her saying how confused she was. Then was the phone call, was the counseling session kind of the marker for when things shifted? How were you aware of, like, you used the language that she went inward? Help us follow that, exactly what was happening. How were you aware of that?
She just became really quiet. She just became real reserved. She's a very extroverted, gregarious, loud individual.
Yeah, opposite of
me, which was one of the main attractions that I had to her to begin with. And so it was just quiet. Her thoughts went inward. Usually if she thought it, she said it. And she wasn't saying anything on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday evening. She kept doing a few things here or there, but she was just like there, but she wasn't there. She'd sit in the chair, just kind of look out the window. She sent a text to her mom saying, please pray for us here. Lots of spiritual warfare, not doing well, talking about, how she was feeling. I think she sent that to her mom on Sunday. It was a text that she had somewhere on Sunday afternoon. In hindsight, we realized what she was doing, but she slipped in her mind. Her mental capacity went somewhere really deep that she became paranoid, completely paranoid and afraid of everything. And so I went to bed that Sunday evening about 9 o'clock.
Before you talk about, I want to go back to, you had mentioned about that morning. She had texted you. You said you still had the text when she said, I don't want people to put their eyes on me. Mm-hmm. You said at the time, I thought you meant looking at her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In hindsight, looking back, it could very well have been what she was like. I don't want people to touch me with their eyeballs. I don't know. I never asked for clarification on that. I can only assume, but she was making statements that would normally make sense, but really didn't make sense on a lot of those things. And so she just became really quiet, which is very unusual for her. Sure. She just never really did that.
As she's sort of stepping away, that was another example of just how far removed she was from the person that you had built a family with, built a ministry with, had raised all your kids with. Like, I'm assuming that it felt like something serious. In the moments, Brian, on that Sunday, what were you aware of as far as, like, were you still thinking like medication? Okay, this is
I figured at that point, okay, she has accepted logically that she knows she's not feeling well, and so she's just going to stop the internal angst and turmoil that she's feeling. And so I just assumed that she had made peace with it and was resting in the fact that I was okay, she was okay, and it was just the medicine. And so a couple other things that had been going on, like she was convinced the boys were going to get kicked out of North Greenville because we used the Walgreens version of the COVID test versus the CVS version. And then she'd read something about Greenville County schools. We're going to have a stronger stance on COVID coming back, and the kids were supposed to start back to school on that Tuesday. And so she was convinced that the kids were going to get kicked out of school, and they were going to come get our kids and take them away from us because we weren't getting the right COVID test for them. And I'm like, that's not going to happen, Sheri. That's ludicrous. It's just not going to happen. So it was little small things like that. And she would know after she said it like that. I know that doesn't make sense, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. So there was these moments where she was lucid, but other times where she was just in complete psychosis and entertaining wild thoughts that were just absurd, that she knew. She communicated that she knew. I know what I'm thinking is not right, but I just can't stop it. I can't stop what I'm hearing in my head.
She goes silent on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go to bed that night?
Mm-hmm. So I crash after I have that meeting, take a little nap. I think she kind of sleeps. I go to bed about 9 because I'm going to try to get up early that next morning, because what would normally take me 30 minutes to get ready, because I'm still so sick, I have to do a nebulizer treatment. I needed a good hour and a half to get up and get things going so I could get going. And so I knew that I needed to get up early. And so I wasn't feeling great. I had already kind of overdid it, I felt, by doing church and doing the finance committee meeting and all that. And so I get up. I never will forget last time I saw her. I was sitting in the recliner. She was sitting right there next to me on the couch, and she had a laundry basket, and she was just folding everybody's laundry. I said, well, I think I'm just going to go ahead and go to bed. And I never will forget the look that she gave me. It was a look of sadness, like heartbroken sadness. And I said, I love you. Good night. And leaned down and kissed her, and she kissed me, and she said, I love you too. And I walked upstairs and got in the bed, and that was the last time I saw her alive.
Man, I'm sorry, bro. You wake up on Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that day.
Yeah, it's the worst day of my life. So, like I said, I decided I was going to go back to work on Monday, and I was not going to go at full capacity. I knew I was just going to go in, try to piddle around for a few hours and come back and go rest. And so I got up that morning before the sun was up, and I kind of snuck out of the room because it was still the summertime. So the kids were not in school. So I was just going to let Sheri sleep. So I got ready quiet, and we keep the room really dark. And so I just kind of walked out quiet, trying just not to disturb her. And I go downstairs and do a few things here or there. And then right around 7:15, Lydia comes down and says, hey, I'm going to take the dog for a walk. Who do I need to check in with? Because she would go walk the neighborhood that we lived in. And we always made her send us a text or call us when she was at the halfway point so that, we knew she was okay. I said, well, you're going to have to tell your mom because I'm going to work.
And she would have been 12, 13 at the time?
Yeah, Lydia had just turned 15.
Okay, 15.
Yeah, so she was 15. And so she's like, okay, well, where is Mom? I'm like, well, I assume she's upstairs in the bed. She's like, no, I just looked in there. She's not in the bedroom. I'm like, are you sure? So I went up, and no, she wasn't in there. And so we started kind of looking around, and it wasn't unusual for her to get up early in the morning and do her quiet time and things like that. So she had a little spot out back. She had a hammock in the back of the yard. So I went down there, and she wasn't there. She wasn't on the deck, and she wasn't at all of her normal places. And I thought that was just really weird. And so sometimes, like when I was really sick, since we'd moved Titus out, she had gone and slept in Titus's bed. So she didn't want to disturb me because she was sleeping restlessly because of the medicine. And so I thought, well, maybe she's in Titus's bed. So I went up there. He's not in there. We had another little room, and sometimes she'd crawl up under a blanket on the couch, and I'd never know she was there. And so I thought, well, maybe she's not nowhere at all. And then finally it's like, oh, we can look on our phone, and it was the Apple phone, Find My Location or whatever. And so I open it up, and I see that her location is in the subdivision next to ours, just to the west. And it shows her on a street. And I'm like, well, she loved to walk, but she would never walk a subdivision over, and how do you get to that subdivision? So I said, well, let's just call. She won't answer. It's not answering her phone. And so I tell Lydia, I was like, come on, let's just jump in the vehicle. We'll drive and see, because Josh, whenever she would go on a walk, especially early in the morning, she always took the dog with her. She'd always had that companionship, because sometimes she would, go really, really, really early in the morning, and the dog was still at the house. So we get in the vehicle, and we're driving out of our neighborhood, driving down Rocky Creek to go to Morning Mist area. And then as we're going, you know how your phone will sometimes just update location.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm looking at the phone, and her little dot moves from that road in that subdivision back to our neighborhood down at the soccer field, which was 5-6 houses from where we live. On the walking trails, there's a ton of walking trails that we had back in that neighborhood. And I was like, okay, well, that's not unusual. Sheri lots of times go for a walk in the woods, but she always took the dog with her. And so Lydia's calling her, I'm calling her. And I mean, I'm pretty good at not having my phone on, and everything's going terrible and people are trying to get a hold of me. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe she just doesn't have her phone on, whatever, all that kind of stuff. So we get back to the field. We drive back to the soccer field, and of course it's closed off, so you have to park outside and you walk in. I mean, it's a good piece to walk in to the trail area. And so Lydia and I said, okay, well, we know she's somewhere in this vicinity. We start calling her name. She's not answering. And so there's a couple of trails that connect one end of the soccer field to the other. And so I said, and it showed her on the dot that she was in between those. And so I said, okay, Lydia, you go run up to that end of the field. I'll start here on this end of the field, and let's just kind of meet in the middle as we're going. And so she did. So she starts running, and she gets at the top of the field there, and I'm going into the woods on my end, and she's up there, and she's like, she calls me. She's like, I want to talk to you because I don't want to go into the woods alone. I was like, oh, that's fine. That's no problem. So she's calling, I'm calling, and Lydia comes around a corner on the top side of the trail there. And it's a very popular spot down there where kids go and throw rocks and they play and do all kinds of stuff down there. And I hear Lydia say, Mom, Dad, I found Mom. She's laying on the ground. I was like, is she okay? And she's like, I don't know. She won't respond. She's just laying there. And I said, hang up right now and call 911. And I'm coming right to you. And so by this point, I'm maybe 75, 80 yards away from her in the woods. And so I start running to her, to where Lydia's at. And when I say running, I mean, I'm not like a marathon guy. I mean, I'm still literally taking nebulizer breathing treatments.
Yeah.
So I'm shuffling down the trail as fast as I can. And I get there, and at first I don't see her, but Lydia's pointing. She's on the other side of the creek. And so, all right, I don't know how come I thought about this, but I just took my shoes, my socks off, rolled up my pants leg, everything, and I jumped in the creek. And, it's a good 30 yards wide to get to the other side. And so I'm going across the creek to get to Sheri, and I see that she's laying there. She's laying on her back, and she's kind of on a hill. And so this creek and the side of that hill on the side of our neighborhood did go into that adjacent subdivision. And the kids sometimes would just go across the creek, and, there's a trail. And so I thought, well, she's tried to climb that hill and she's fallen and she's knocked out. And so I get over there, and sure enough, I see, she's injured, and I'm like, what is going on? And so I'm like, Sheri, and she's completely unresponsive. And so I reach down and I shake her shoulders. And when I shake her shoulders to move, that's when the gun falls off her chest. I hadn't seen it up to that point. And so I put 2 and 2 together rather quickly and just start screaming.
Oh, my goodness. Brian, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And so I remember yelling and looking at her and screaming at the loudest I could possibly scream, why would you do this to us? Why would you do this to us? And I turn around and I sit down on the side of the creek bank right next to her. And I don't know how long I was sitting there. Felt like 30 minutes, but I know it wasn't. It wasn't. Because I come to because Lydia, thank God, she had left that morning to go on the walk. She didn't put her contacts in. She did not put her glasses on. So she could tell that was her mom over on the other side of the creek, but she couldn't see a thing. She's like, Dad, what is wrong? They're asking you to do CPR. They're telling you to do CPR. And I just remember saying, it's too late. It's too late. And so she's like, what do you mean it's too late? You've got to do something. You've got to do something. So I walk back across the thing, and Lydia's upset because she's like, you've got to do something. What is wrong? What's wrong? And so I take the phone out of her hand and I talk to the 911 agent. And I was like, she's not coming back from this. There's nothing that I can do for her. She's gone. And that's when it sunk in for Lydia, and she lost it. So I'm trying to talk to the 911 person and take care of her. And I'm like, it's like, this is not real. This can't be real. At this point, we hear the fire engines and the ambulances and everything. And they keep driving by the field because they don't know that we're at the address that we're in. We're in the woods. And so I finally have enough thought. I was trying to explain to the person on the phone where we were, and she was not being able to translate it to the dispatcher to get it. And so I finally said, Lydia, you're going to have to run back out to the road and tell them where we're at. And so she did. She ran out there. I hung up the phone, and I remember I'm on this side of the creek. Sheri's on that side of the creek. And I just collapsed, just went like a wet noodle down on the ground, completely limp, collapsed. And I'm by myself. You can hear the creek. I can see Sheri. I remember I said, God, if I'm going to get up off this ground, it's going to have to be you because I can't do this. I cannot do this. I am done. I'm done. And instantly, if I had never been a believer, if I had been an atheist, if I had never believed in God, what I experienced at that moment would unequivocally convince me that there was a God, because something shot within me from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, a strength, something, electricity is what it felt like, that I have never felt before in my life. Because I went down. I'm not coming up. You know, I'm done. I want to crawl up next to her and die. That's where she's at. That's where I want to be. But when I said that to God, He gave me something supernatural. And by now the police are walking up, and I'm able to stand up, and I explain kind of what's going on, where she's at, what happened. And of course, it's a crime scene. So they're having to treat it like a crime scene. And so they won't let me go back over, which I totally get. I totally understand. I didn't want to go back over, but I wasn't going to leave her. They wanted me to leave. I was like, I'm not leaving until she leaves. When she comes out of the woods, I'll go out of the woods. So they kind of detained me down there, and I'm trying to think, what do I do?
Yeah.
So Lydia comes back, and I'm calling my kids because I'm trying to get somebody. I need to get a hold of somebody. And so none of them were answering. Gideon was asleep. Titus was in the shower up at North Greenville. Levi didn't have a phone. And so I'm like, somebody's got to come help me with this. I don't know how long I'm going to be down here. And so I never will forget. I sent Wayne a text. I said, I'm not coming into the office today. And I sent it. Now, when these things happen, you know what you're thinking, but you really don't. I mean,
yeah.
You're in your mind, but you're not in your
1,000 miles
mind.
an hour, and also slow.
He replies back. He said, "It's okay. Have you gotten sick? COVID. You're still not feeling better or whatever." I'm like, "How stupid. I'm not coming in the office today." Like, yeah, like I was going to waltz into the office after that, right?
Yeah.
And so I dialed his number immediately. First person I called. Said, "Hey, can you come to my house?" And he said, "Yep, I'm on my way right now." Didn't ask a question. Didn't say what was going on. He just said, "I'm on my way right now." And then I got to thinking about it like 5 or 10 minutes later. And I'm like, he doesn't know what he's driving into. And plus, when he gets to the house, I'm not at the house. So
Yeah, you're over here, and that's around the corner.
Yeah.
Like maybe a 5 or 10 minute walk from your
yeah,
house. At
it's a
that
good
point
quarter
in
mile
time.
from the house. So I call him back and I said, "You need to know what you're stepping into. Sheri's dead." And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, she killed herself." He's like, "What?" I said, I can't get a hold of the kids, but the police are coming and I don't want their first interaction to be with the police.
Yeah.
Can you just go and stay at the house with them? He's like, I'm there. Well, by this time, Lydia had gotten back to the house because I had sent her back up to the house because she just didn't need to be there. I needed her to go get her brothers. And so she had gone and waken up Gideon and told him that something was
Terribly wrong.
Yeah. And so they're coming out on the porch. Wayne's pulling up. And I had called Tanner, lady who used to be our assistant there in the office, because she was the emergency contact. And I said, Sheri's died, and I'm here with her, and I can't get to the house. Wayne's on his way. I'm calling as many people as I can, Somebody's got to get to my kids because I can't be there. And so I called a couple of other folks and said, because I was just trying to get somebody to the house quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids to worry about.
Yeah. And so they all show up. And Wayne says, "Look, I got your kids. Don't worry about it. I'll stay right here with them." And let me tell you, there's a lot of things people know about Wayne, but there's some things they don't know. And one of the things you don't know about Wayne is that he does for the one what he wished that he could do for the thousands. Because he wasn't just my pastor. He was my friend that morning. And he never doubted. He never questioned. He just went into serve mode. And on the worst day of my life, I got to see the best side of him. Because he loved my kids the way that I would want somebody to love on my kids. That's not a pastor. That's a friend. I'll never forget that.
Man, what a special friend.
I asked him if he could bring the kids down because I'm still at the field. And I'm not in the best mind, and I'm arguing with the police because, it's like, I'm not going to leave. They wouldn't let me leave, but I wanted to see my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem.
And so I said, "Look, they're kids. Can they not just come down here? They don't have to come to the crime scene. I'm smart enough to realize that they don't need to be where she's at. But can I just go meet them on the other side of the soccer field? I just want to hug them."
Yeah. Had to be done.
So they finally allow Wayne to bring them down, and they come down, and we meet on the other side of the soccer field, and we're hugging and crying. I said, I think y'all understand your mom's gone. She's gone. There was a rumor in the subdivision that she had had a heart attack. And so that was the question.
What happened?
What happened? I had to tell him, like, she took her own life. Of course, that makes it even worse.
So hard.
So, we all break down again. And I pulled him back, and I don't know where this came from because it was a God thing, but it was like, there's a couple things you need to know. Number one, this is not God's fault. God is not to blame for your mom's death. You know, your mom's been sick. You know, I've been sick. None of us have been at our best. We don't know what was going on. But this is not God's fault. You cannot blame God for this. And number two is, I don't know where we go from here. I don't know what we're going to do. But I promise you this. We're going to do it together. And you're not going to have to face what you're going to face by yourself. I can't be your mom, but I can be your dad. I can't be both of us, but whatever it is that we're going to face, we're going to do it together. And then I just pulled them together and prayed over them. And the police were so great. I mean, they were awesome. And I prayed real simple. God, you know, we need you. And none of this makes sense. We don't know where we're supposed to go. I remember the first chapter of Job. The Lord gives. I prayed out loud. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of our Lord.
Amen.
So they went back to the house. Wayne took them back to the house and stayed with them. I went back with the police and stayed over there. Coroner comes, does their thing. And the guys in Greenville County Coroner's Office, the police and the first responders are awesome.
Brian, what a great father. Man, the words, just listening to you say those out loud right now in this moment are so incredibly real. And to know that the Lord met you there, and to know like how you said that, like if you had not been a believer, if you were an atheist, you would know in that moment on that creek bank that God had met you there, like in only the way that he could have. And then you took that and you walked it across that soccer field and you gave it to your kids.
Yeah. Well, it's all because it wasn't me. It was God. I would like to think I had lived a surrendered life, Josh, up to that point. But I have never had to surrender like I had to that morning. And it was a beautiful surrender. It was a broken surrender. It was a hurtful and painful surrender. But I went into that field one way and came out a completely different man. I looked the same, but there was something different on the inside.
Life had to keep moving forward.
Sure did.
How'd you put one foot in front of the other and walk off that field that day, Brian?
Another one of my buddies, my best friend in the world, other than my brother, had heard. And you got to remember, this is a complete crime scene. I had trusted my kids with Wayne. I knew they were fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just down there by myself.
Sure.
And I'm looking across the field. And I mean, there are police, firefighters. I mean, just all kinds of folks. The neighborhood has shown up.
Yeah.
They're trying to come in. The police are running them out.
And this just so people understand, this isn't the kind of neighborhood that would see even anything medical. Like this is just a normal Southern,
Subdivision,
subdivision,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And so all of a sudden on the other side of the field, I see John Tinsley walking across the field. And he's in suspenders, so he looks like firefighters. His pants look like it. And I mean, it's just like he was completely invisible. He just walked right through all those police. He walked right through all those firefighters. And he came walking to the other side of the field.
Oh my goodness.
And he hugged me. And he sat with me. So since my kids were taken care of, God sent somebody to take care of me. And he helped me walk out after they brought her body out. And they loaded her up. I followed out behind him with him. He got me back to the house. I don't remember how we got back to the house. I just know we got back to the house. And Wayne was there. Terry was there. Catherine was there by now. Of course, all the neighbors are standing there looking, wanting to know what's going on. And so I remember getting out of the vehicle saying, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of this right now. And so I said, John, will you just go? I just pointed to some of the houses around. I mean, we knew all of our neighbors had been there for 9 years, you know. I said, just get them together. And so they all knew something had happened. And so they all gathered at the bottom of the driveway. About 5 minutes later, I said, Sheri's not with us anymore. She's gone. She took her life this morning. I don't know what happened. There's no note. There's no nothing that we can find, but we think it was probably the medicine that she was on. And so I said, I just wanted you to hear it from me instead of what, you know, people were saying that she had a heart attack on the walking trail or something like that. I said, no, that didn't happen. And so the police come and, you know, they're like, they have to dust for fingerprints and all that. I mean, you know, and they kept asking me all these questions like, was somebody stalking your wife? Was somebody stalking y'all? And I'm like, no. She's like, was anybody threatening y'all? And I was like, no, there's nobody that's been threatening us. I didn't quite understand what they were doing. And then later it occurred to me, the reason they were asking that is because even though I had found Sheri and I had shaken her, you know, I didn't touch her. I was other than touching to realize that she wasn't there anymore. I didn't realize it, but she had taken the 9mm and taken every bullet, the 2 magazines and every bullet out of all of the boxes, all the shells, and stuffed them in her pockets, her pant pockets, her coat pockets. She had 4 or 5 dozen rounds of ammunition on her. And so the police suspected that she thought she was in danger.
Yeah.
You know, and Sheri was a country girl, you know. She knew she could sit there and put a gun together with a blindfold on, you know. So she knew what she was doing. But the fact that she had taken all the magazines, all the bullets and everything with her, well, the police opened on her phone. And one of the things that she had looked up right before she died was how to load a gun. She didn't need to look that up. She knew exactly how to do that. And so she was just in a state of psychosis where at least she wasn't thinking, you know, the things that would be normal for her. She couldn't figure out the right answer. And so that was 16th day of August in 2021. And all of our lives changed at that point from that day forward.
And the weight of that, Brian, is just incredibly heavy. And thank you for sharing with us. I want to know a little bit about your family, how you move forward. What were the ways in which you were able to lead your family well? I don't mean just through those initial weeks. I mean, over the past 5 years, how have you, now as a single man, you're in ministry, you've still got all the responsibilities. All the while, our church has done nothing but grow and get bigger. Budgets just have more zeros at the end.
Yeah.
You now are a father and a grandfather. Lots of life has changed for you. You're a single man leading well. How in the world have you been able to move forward?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a couple of things that just pop in my head right out of the gate. Number one is I got a great team, Wayne and Wes and the rest of the team. I mean, they leaned in and loved on our family like nobody's business. Not only those first couple of days, but months and months and months afterwards, just were right there. So I had all the support that I needed, but you hit a high point, which is I'm not just a dad. I'm not just a husband who just lost a wife. I'm in a very public facing job. I'm in ministry and with thousands of folks that I interact with on a weekly basis. And so I don't really know the right answer on how do you grieve and walk through pain in a public fishbowl kind of existence. But I think it really goes back to that prayer that I had on the floor of the ground there beside the creek. God, if I'm going to get up from here, I'm not going to be able to do this. You're going to have to do this. And so the weeks and the months after, the church rallied around me, people rallied around me. I got a group of guys that dozen of them or so will check in very faithfully on me because of the traumatic situation that happened. Got all of us into counseling, was able to get connected with some folks who specialize in trauma and traumatic events. And so, it's at first it felt like, I'm just shooting from the hip, just trying to get something together, because the school system was supposed to start on that next Tuesday. All right.
Right then.
Exactly. And so we had 2 that were out of school and were in college and 2 that were in school. And I mean, when I say I didn't do anything with the kids related to school other than just make sure they had their supplies and drop them off and pick them up, that was really the extent. I mean, I'd go to the end of the year things, or if they were playing sports, I'd go to that. But Sheri was a teacher in heart, and so she did all of the homework. She did everything. I had no clue about any of that kind of stuff.
Doctor's office visit, all that. I'm taking my kids to the doctor, like, what's their full name? I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah. 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 So, I had to figure all of that out.
Overnight.
It was like.
Because all the appointments, all the meetings with all that's happening the very next day.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to go to the funeral home. We have to talk to the coroner. It's still an active investigation until they rule out. Became unequivocally, although she didn't leave a suicide note, it became very obvious that she did what she did intentionally. And so the police closed the investigation, and we kind of transitioned from there. And in the process of doing that, the one thing that I would like to say that was pretty intentional, I got connected with a group of guys called Refuge Widowers. And it started by a guy named Daniel Booker out of Atlanta. And he was a young father that lost his wife to cancer and he had some young kids, infants at the house, and was like, somebody needs to be ministering to these kind of people. And so Blaine Darlin, who works on staff with us at the church, I never will forget, it's 2 weeks after it had happened. Blaine comes walking into my office and he says, there's a conference you need to go to, and you're not going to want to go to it, but you need to go to this conference. And so I'm going to give you this phone number. I'm going to give you this guy's name. You need to call him and you need to go. And remember, I had surrendered something on that ground down by the soccer field. And up to that point in my life, if it didn't already make sense to me, I didn't entertain it as an option.
Yeah.
But God had my attention. And so here's Blaine. I mean, he's one of the staff that takes care of the grounds. I mean, I know him. I know his family. The good guy. But I mean, he's walking into my office and presuming to tell me something
right
that I needed to do. And
he was multiple layers down from you in the org chart, right?
And my natural response would have been to bow up.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are you thinking here? But it was like God's like, take the phone number and just call him. And so I did. Sheri died in August. This retreat was in September. And so I was welcomed into a group of another 12 guys who were in the exact same situation that I was in. Most of them were younger, with younger family members. I was probably the second oldest guy in the group. I did not want to be there. Because here's something with suicide that you don't really think about until you experience it. There's a stigma, whether it's self-imposed or it's societal, I don't know. But there is this stigma, I guess is the word that I would use, a shame that comes with suicide. It's like if Sheri had been driving to Walmart and got into an accident and died. That's one thing. If she had been sitting at the house and had a heart attack and died, that would have been another thing. She got in cancer and died. But the way that she died, it's like we all know that our time on this earth is short. But to know that you exited under your own terms versus when you naturally would go, it was just hard because none of those guys had that story. None of those guys, we all had experienced loss, but I had a different type of loss. I thank God for Bob Gambrell and counselors like that. And thankfully, I've been able to stay in counseling. That's one thing the church has done from day one. They've taken care of me and my family. And so all the counseling that we need to walk through this, they've been there. And so it's been a journey. It's not been easy, but a part of that refuge ministry, I got a free access to Nothing is Wasted workbook, which was created by Davey Blackburn out of Indianapolis. I don't know if you know Davey or not, but
church planter, sure do.
He lost his wife tragically in 2015. His house was broke into, and the people that broke into his house killed his wife and killed their unborn baby. And so he used that traumatic experience to develop this 11-week course called Nothing is Wasted. And a part of it, I mean, it's just total God, Josh, how he works. It's incredible that everything that I needed to work through this, he put right in front of me. I didn't have to go searching. I didn't have to go looking. I didn't have to go begging. It was like there. And so the first part of Nothing is Wasted is set in your pain.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you're feeling. Identify it. Don't try to cover it up. Don't try to run from it. Experience it. And that was so helpful because as a guy, you know, we want to pull up our bootstraps and move on to the next thing, right? We got things to do, people to see, places to go, right?
And if you think about your particular situation, if anybody had a reason to say, everyone's dependent on me, you could have said it.
Yeah.
You could have said, my job, the staff, the people are dependent on me. I can't focus on me right now. There'll be time for that. But that wasn't the route you took. And man, I'm telling you, I've talked to pastors a lot of time who've experienced like difficult, like trauma, different than yours. But I'm finding the more often that those guys will slow down and get help just to make sense of life. And I don't know, I would encourage, and I'm sure you would too. Like if somebody's in a situation to where they're trying to deal with trauma and also trying to lead in ministry, like don't walk, run to a counselor and just say, I need some help walking through this situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I would say it like this. Well, my wife was a counselor. So I view everybody needs a counselor. Just like you need a mechanic, just like you need a primary care physician, I believe everybody in life in America needs a counselor that you can go to. There's used to be a stigma when we were growing up. If you went to a counselor, something's wrong with you.
You're broken.
Yeah. Well, we are.
Fundamentally.
Yes. But the smart ones realize, I realize I'm broken and I really need somebody to help me to do this. And so leaning in to do that is exactly right. And let me tell you, Wayne took the team and he led us through. I didn't appreciate it. I mean, I did appreciate it, but I didn't really think about it until we got to the other side because right before Sheri died, our senior adult pastor, Dan Taylor, passed away. And so 6 weeks in between. So we as a staff had experienced a lot of loss and we were growing. The day that Sheri died on that Monday, that following Sunday, we launched 2 campuses, not one, but 2 campuses that following Sunday, Malden and Anderson. The church grows exponentially like crazy in the next 18 months. And so by 2023, 2024, we're the 9th largest growing church in America. We, are baptizing people left and right. Our budget goes from 4 to 5 million, 10 million. I mean, God is blessing. But in the middle of all of that growth and in the middle of all of the stuff that you do in ministry, Wayne had enough sensitivity to the Holy Spirit where he was like, y'all need to take some time. Take care of you. Take care of your family. Take care of what's going on. And if you need to go get help, go get help. I never will forget, he came in one, he's like, always tell us to go do this, go to this conference, go to that conference. He said, I want you to take a day and just go be by yourself. Go sit in front of God. Just be his child. Let him talk to you. Just being very proactive about our spiritual well-being as pastors, as leaders, but also realizing that even though you are busy, even though there are more things to get done, you need to take care of you. And I mean, this is just one of those things, like I said before, Wayne he does for the one what he wishes he probably could do for the thousands, but every now and then he'll just schedule a day, hey, let's go off-roading. I mean, he's got thousands of things he could be doing. Let's go fishing. We ain't gone fishing yet, but he wants to go fishing. I want to go fishing. So he builds that in.
You know some people. We should be able to pull that off.
I know, but he'll do that. He helps us find that balance. And so as a church, as a staff, we are very committed that if you need help, I don't care what kind of help it is, we're going to try to find you the help that you need to get there. And even if your church has limited resources, even if you are the only main leader in your church, you owe it to your family, you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to the kingdom of God to get the help you need, to raise your hand when you need it, to say, I got to have somebody come walk this. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. A healthy leader is a leader who knows their limits.
Oh, man, a healthy leader is a leader who knows their limits, man. Brian, let me ask you this question. We have a deep belief that our calling in life is directly connected to our identity, to the thing that God places deep within inside of us, our blessing. In the past few years, since that day in August, how has God affirmed that calling and blessing in terms of your identity in you?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask it that way, because I was just talking to my good buddy John about this a few weeks ago. I would probably describe my life as a leader, my life as a person, with this word picture. Before 2021, I was a mile wide and mostly an inch deep. After 2021, I'm probably a foot wide and a mile deep. And I'm still who I am, but there's just been some rewiring, that theological questions I've had to work through, free will, sovereignty, those things don't change. Solo parenting, I've gotten so used to having Sheri as a sounding board to not have that anymore. It was disturbing. I could talk to her about everything. You know what it's like, and all of a sudden not have that, and to have somebody to pray with, that just companionship that's not there. I won't say that I had to learn it all on my own, but my identity, or who I thought I had, I'm a father, a husband, 4 kids. We've checked all the boxes. We got the 2 cars, the dog, the house, the picket fence. We got it all, to now getting to the other side of it. And it's like so much of what I thought was externally important, what I thought was not like from a selfish or materialistic perspective, but just the things that we would spend so much time and energy on, it really just doesn't matter. And the most important thing I probably learned on the other side of this is that really, in a lot of ways, control is just an illusion. We don't have as much control as we think we do. And really, our world is nothing more than just a facade propped up by a bunch of 2x4s, like on a studio lot from Warner Brothers back in the 1950s. We think we have things set up. We have our little system. We have our little routine. We have all these, and we do, we build life that is comfortable, but when all that's pulled out from underneath you, what do you got? And I can tell you this, if I hadn't have cultivated the internal disciplines of being with God, of prayer, of staying accountable with other guys, of doing just the basic formations of blocking, tackling, just these are the foundations of the spiritual walk. If I hadn't have had that, when everything did fall apart, I would have been a complete mess. I would have been a complete mess. I would have had nothing to be my bearing. But I will say this, when you do have those traumatic experiences, the God of the Bible becomes the God of your life in a way that you never really, and it's not from an experiential, extra blessing, Holy Spirit kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about He loves you and knows you way more than what you give Him credit for. And as a leader, if you're leading on empty or you're leading in the best position you've ever been in life, things are going great. You're not immune to the effects of this world. You're not shielded from the difficulties. As a matter of fact, I would probably say you're going to be walking into things that are going to break you, and they're going to break you deeply. And I think that God is able to use any and everybody. But when I read my Bible, I find people who have been broken deeply at their innermost being, who yield themselves to Him in a way. Jonah didn't get into the belly of the great fish without tapping out, right?
Yeah.
Peter didn't get to be the one who denied Him and then being asked the 3 questions, do you love me? Until he tapped out and said, okay, I'm going to follow you. Paul didn't get to be the guy chained to all these Roman soldiers, leading them to Christ and writing so much of the New Testament until he tapped out. And so we have to get rid of this illusion in our life as leaders that if we're comfortable, we're safe, we're protected, we're just going to weather the storm and move through it. It's like we need to be aware that sometimes we serve a fierce and a mighty God who loves us with an incredible love. But in the midst of that incredible love, He's dangerous. He's not safe in a good way.
Yeah.
And He loves you enough to not let you stay where you're at with your sitting in your stuff, to let you stay there, to be incapable of being used for the kingdom.
Beautiful, Brian. I care a great deal about stories that put Jesus on display. And that's exactly what you've done. And that's who you are. I'd love to speak something over you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Just a simple blessing, which is just recognizing beauty given by the Lord. And I see that in you. And it's a quite an interesting partnership that I see. I don't know if this resonates with you, but it does me. That you have a very strong yet quiet sense of courage that the Lord was able to use in some really chaotic moments. And your mission, your passion in this life, God leverages that, I'm sure, on a regular basis to bring about His purposes. The second thing is a love for adventure. I'd go back to that moment where you saw that young, beautiful lady in the cowboy hat in front of you. I love it. But it's sort of a microcosm about, in a way, of how you've always looked to adventure. And I think at this phase of your life, you may be dreaming about adventure. I don't know how God's going to continue to use you. I know He's using you right now in my life, in this church, in this community. But I know that the partnership between courage and adventure for you, man, what a beautiful, beautiful thing the Lord has done and put together in Brian Owens.
Yeah, to God be the glory.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today, buddy.
Thank you for inviting me and giving me a safe place to share. And my prayer is that God will use it however he needs to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pastors and leaders, if you'd like to stay up to date with everything going on at Heart to Mission and get resources for free right in your inbox, we'd love for you to go to hearttomission.com and sign up for the newsletter. Love to stay in touch with you.